Hello everyone. So today we'll be discussing the dental materials, and the book that you have to refer for dental materials is Phillips. Whatever book you are referring, like I just remember we used to follow, I think, Sumannapalli as a additional book. So whatever book you are referring, you can just refer for the theory part or some conceptual part, but for the numerical values you have to refer for the Phillips, like what is the coefficient of thermal expansion or some graphs or some numerical values. For all that, the final decision will be taken by the book Phillips. If you don't have, just tell me, I'll send you the book, the soft copy. Today we'll be dealing with the physical properties part for the dental materials, and in this lecture I'll be covering your rheology, creep, flow, hue, value, chroma, coefficient of thermal expansion, tarnish, corrosion, and galvanism. So these topics will be covered today, and in the next video we'll be covering the rest of the topics, that includes your stress and strain graph, elastic limits, what is resilience, what is toughness, what is Poisson's ratio, what is proportional limit, what is cold working, what is brittleness, ductility, malleability, and your Brinell Rockwell Vickers and Knoop hardness number. So let's come to the today's part. So today we will be first of all dealing with the rheology. In rheology, the questions that can come is which one of the following is an ideal fluid. What happens is that whenever some stress is applied to the fluid is going to behave in a different way. Like whenever the stress is applied, either the fluid can behave like, okay, the stress is applied, it will behave with a constant strain, that is, it will start moving the way the stress is applied, more stress, more flow. But there are some fluids that are going to react in a opposite way, that the more stress is applied, the less flow is there. But there are some fluids too that are going to behave in a different way, that is, more stress is applied, more flow is there. And some are going to behave in a viscoelastic manner, means viscous be or elastic be. So the questions that is asked, that which of the following is an ideal fluid, the answer will be a Newtonian fluid. The question can be there like which of the following fluid shows stress directly proportional to the strain, the answer will be Newtonian fluid. Fine, you can see here also in the graph, whenever the stress is increased, the strain is increased. So it is behaving in a manner, in a constant manner, that as the stress is increased, strain is also increased. The viscosity means as you are going to apply more stress, the fluid is becoming constantly fluid according to that stress, more flow. Fine. Next we come to the dilatant fluid. Dilatant, as the name itself suggests, that this is something dilute, dilatant, something flowy, but actually it is not like that. And the method to remember is that I have told you that, yeah, it seems to be dilute, it seems to be flowy, but actually it is not that flowy, because viscosity increases, the dilution or flow decreases. That's why in case of dilatant fluid, the whenever you are going to increase the stress, its viscosity increases, it is not going to become more flowy. So the question can come that this property is shown by which type of fluid, that the viscosity is increased or become less mobile, less fluid when we apply the stress. The answer will be a dilatant. So here you can see that as the stress is applied, viscosity increases. It's not constant like Newtonian, but apart from that, its viscosity increases. So this type of fluid are known as dilatant fluid. And another can come a thixotropic fluid. For thixotropic fluid, the viscosity of the fluid decreases, it's opposite to that of the dilatant. So the question can again be asked that viscosity is decreases on applying pressure. An example of this is your ketchup. that when you will apply pressure, its viscosity will decrease and it will start flowing. So these things should be clear to you basically, because they can ask any, they can either show which of the following is a Newtonian fluid and you have to find the option, and they can either ask you in the form of question that which of the following shows stress proportional to the strain, and you have to find out the option Newtonian. Next comes your pseudoplastic. Pseudoplastic is again important because in case of pseudoplastic, viscosity decreases with increase in the shear stress, that as you increase the stress, the viscosity will increase until they reach a constant value. Fine. This is pseudoplastic. So as the stress is increased, the viscosity will increase, but after that viscosity will not increase, it will have a constant value. So guys, pseudoplastic are the ones in which viscosity decreases as the strain is increased. Basically, viscosity decreases until a certain when it reaches a certain value, and after that it remains constant. Means neither the viscosity increases nor decreases. The example for it is like when some materials are forced through the syringe, and when we apply a pressure to them, they become less viscous and they become more fluid. Fine. And the last one is the viscoelastic, which is characterized by elastic as well as viscous. So some fluids are going to behave like a viscous as well as sometimes like an elastic. Next we come to the creep. Creep is defined as a time dependent plastic strain of a material under a static load or constant stress. It means basically that whenever stress is continuously applied over something, it keeps on deformating, and after some time it breaks. Fine. Creep occurs in amalgam, and we'll be discussing about the creep in amalgam. Fine. And since creep produced constant plastic deformation, the process over time can lead to the destructive dental amalgam filling. We'll be dealing with the creep part in the amalgam, that how much creep is in your low mercury, high copper, these type of phases. Fine. Now let's move to the next one. The first one is your Benzold-Brudke effect. The question is asked endless number of times. What is Benzold-Brudke effect? What happens that at low light levels, the retina of human eye are doing more. Fine. Like for example, if you see a red color for a longer time, fine, then what will happen, that the receptor will fatigue, and when you will see them at a white background, sometimes you have seen that they are going to appear as green. So different color in the different light is your Benzold-Brudke effect. Fine. And next is your metamerism, that the appearance of an object is dependent upon nature of the light in which the object is viewed. For example, in the clinic we have got daylight, incandescent, fluorescent lamps and all that, and we'll see that the objects that appear to be color matched under one type of light may appear different in other type of light. This happens in the clinics also. Like if we see in the sunlight, the color would appear different. When we'll see in our dental chair light, color would appear different. So different color in the different light is metamerism. And what is fluorescence? It is basically that say for example, it's a natural tooth and it is going to absorb 300 to 400 nanometer of the light, but in turn it also emits the light of some wavelength that is more nanometer than with which it comes, like 400 to 450 nanometer. And this phenomena, when it gives it takes a wavelength that is shorter and it emits a wavelength that is bigger, is this phenomena is called as fluorescence. The question can come, what is fluorescence? Or when the tooth absorbs lesser wavelength and emits larger wavelength, what is this called? Metamerism. Different color in different light, metamerism. Okay. And Benzold-Brudke effect, that at lower light levels the object is different, and when you see it for more number of time at higher light level, it is going to appear different. So such questions can come. Next we come to the coefficient of thermal expansion, and the coefficient of thermal expansion is the change in the length, delta L, upon the original length when the temperature, there is a raise in the temperature by 1 degree Celsius. So there is a change in the length whenever we are going to change the temperature. That is known as your coefficient of thermal expansion. Fine. So in this case, you have to remember that different materials have different coefficient of thermal expansion. Like say for example, for the amalgam it is 25. For tooth enamel it is 11.4. For type 2 GIC it is 11.4. So the question can come that the coefficient of thermal expansion of the enamel is close to type 2 GIC. Fine. And if we consider that the coefficient of thermal expansion of tooth enamel is 1 and coefficient of thermal expansion of type 2 GIC is very close to it, that is 0.96, and coefficient of thermal expansion of amalgam will be 2.19. So basically the question that is asked is your enamel and type 2 GIC is same, and another that you should be remembering is dentine, that is 8.3, and aluminous porcelain, that is 6.6, that can come. Fine. And amalgam is 25 times that 2.5 times that of the enamel. This should be known. Fine. Next we come to hue, value and chroma. Hue refers to the dominant wavelength that is present in the spectral distribution, and value is the relative lightness or darkness of an object, and chroma is the degree of saturation of a particular hue. Many MCQs on it also. What is chroma, what is value, what is hue, and chroma is, so for example, if there are different red colors, but in some red colors the saturation is more, they will appear as dark, deep red, or blue red, something like that. So that is known as high chroma. And relative lightness or darkness of an object like pink or other dark pink, light pink, that is a value. And dominant color in an object, that is your hue. And you have to just remember that sometimes it is asked that Munsell color system is arranged in this way, and it is arranged qualitatively. Such a kind of MCQs come because it is arranged in the quality of colors, nor in the quantity of colors. So qualitatively will be the answer. Next we here come to tarnish, corrosion. These are the terms that you should be knowing. And the tarnish is the surface discoloration of the metal or a slight loss of alteration of the surface finish or luster. And in oral environment, tarnish often occurs from the formation of the deposits on the surface of the restoration. Tarnish also arises from the formation of thin films. So tarnish is basically something is oxide, sulfide or chloride is formed on the metal, that is known as tarnish. The question can come, tarnish is due to the formation of oxides, sulfides, chlorides, you can get in the answer. And corrosion is a process where deterioration of metal can occur by reaction with the environment. In due course, corrosion can cause severe and catastrophic disintegration of the metal. So corrosion occurs by reaction with the environment, like sorry, metal is going to react with your environment, with the water or with the saliva, and then some electrolyte is there, some cathode is there, some anode is there, and some deposition of products is finally on the metal. So that is known as corrosion. But in tarnish, there is only a layer of sulfide, chloride or oxide, and there are some deposits that are formed on the surface. So tarnish is a forerunner of the corrosion because the tarnish film accumulates components that chemically attack the metallic surface. So you can say that initially the tarnish occurs and later on the corrosion occurs, but usually the question is on the tarnish, that it is by the formation of sulfide, oxides or chlorides. Fine. Next we come to corrosion. Corrosion can be of two types, that is your dry corrosion and your wet corrosion. A dry corrosion is a type of corrosion in which there is no saliva, there is no water, and wet corrosion is the one in which there is an electrolyte, there is some medium in between, that is known as your wet corrosion. And wet corrosion can be in the form of two forms. Wet corrosion can be there in the form of stress corrosion. Stress corrosion is something like in the form area where there is stress, but yeah, electrolyte is also there. And concentration cell corrosion is where there is concentration of material like food debris and all. So that is your concentration cell corrosion, and we'll be discussing with them individually. So we will first of all try to understand the mechanism what happens in corrosion, and it is like this. So what happens that in corrosion there is one cathode and one anode. Fine. Suppose this is amalgam and this is a gold, and the part which gives the electron forms the anode. Obviously, which is giving the electron is becoming positively charged and is working like an anode, and which is taking the electron is your cathode. Is it clear to you? And in between there is a saliva, that is electrolyte. So you can remember in this case when there is amalgam and there is a gold, so A for amalgam and A for anode, and they can ask you in many questions that which of the following is going to act as an anode when amalgam and gold is there. Especially this example is given, so you can just remember it like A for amalgam and A for anode. And what basically happens is that your anode is going to lose the electrons, and it is going to become positively charged, and your cathode is going to take the electrons and it is going to become negatively charged, and it will form certain products that will move from here to the anode, and corrosion products will be deposited on the anode. So you have to remember like this, which of the following is going to act as anode, one thing, and corrosion products are going to be deposited where, another thing. So let's see here. It also depends like which metal is going to behave like a cathode, which is going to behave like an anode. It also depends upon basically the one which is having more negative the electrode potential is going to oxidize, is going to become the anode, and which is having more positive potential, like say for example if we take here we can take it like lead is 0.12 and tin is 0.14. So the more negative is tin. So in this an example, the tin is going to act like an anode and lead is going to act like an cathode. Fine. So what happens in your noble metals like gold, platinum, palladium? They are noble metals and they have electrode potential that is very high. So what happens is that they are not going to lose the electrons, and they are not going to be ionized, and they are not going to corrode. Clear? That's why they are not going to corrode only. So this is the mechanism how the corrosion takes place. One is anode, one is cathode, one is electrolyte. Cathode takes the electrons, it forms the corrosion products, and they get deposited over anode. Sometimes the question is also asked that how where is the corrosion product deposited, and they are deposited at your anode. Clear? Let's move to the next slide, and that is your, like for example what happens in tissue. It's like there is some like say for example here is a gold, here is amalgam, and there is a saliva will act like an electrolyte, amalgam will act like an anode, gold will act like a cathode, and the corrosion products will be deposited at amalgam. And another important point that you have to remember is your galvanic current. When two dissimilar metals are present and there is a electrolyte in the form of saliva, what is going to happen when the two there is some electric circuit is formed in between the two dissimilar metals, and when both the metals will come and contact each other, there is a formation of current, there is a formation of shock, that is known as galvanic shock. And what causes in that case? The patient feels the pain. So question can come that patient is feeling pain while clenching of the mouth, and there are silver and gold restoration present in the mouth. What is the reason? The reason is galvanic shock. Shock is formed because there are two different restoration with the different electrode potential, because the circuit is formed, and whenever they come in contact with each other, they produces current that is of a small amount, and they produces pain in the tooth, and that is known as galvanic shock. And so we are clear, very much clear with your tarnish, we are clear with your corrosion, we are clear with your mechanism of corrosion, and we are clear with your dry corrosion, we are clear with your wet corrosion. And in wet corrosion there are two types of corrosion, that is known as your stress corrosion and your concentration cell corrosion. So let's come to the stress corrosion. What happens that in case of stress corrosion, that since the imposition of stress increases the internal energy of the alloy, and the tendency to undergo corrosion will be increased. So what happens is that due to stress, there will be a point where there is more stress and more fatigue, more cyclic loading, and small surface irregularities like notches and pits are the sites of the stress corrosion, and which occurs at nominal stress below the normal limit of an elastic alloy. So what happens that whenever there is an increase in the stress over certain areas, say for example this, and stress is here at this area, so what is going to happen is that this area is going to act as anode, and the area where there is less stress is going to act as a cathode, and saliva in between will act as an electrolyte, and corrosion products will be formed and they will be deposited at a stressed area. So this type of question can be formed. Deformed metal regions are anode, fine, saliva, and less deformed will act as a cathode, and deformed region will experience corrosion attacks. So the question can be asked, like in stressed area, which of the following area is going to act as an anode? Obviously the area that is stressed is going to act as an anode. In gold and amalgam, which of the following is going to act as an anode? Amalgam, because it has less ionization potential, fine. So this type of question can be asked, which is going to act as an anode, which is going to act as an cathode. And in the same way there is another type of corrosion, that is concentration cell corrosion. Concentration cell corrosion says that whenever there is a pit or something like that and there are food debris deposited over this area, so what happens that because of the food debris, the bottom of the pit is going to have lesser amount of the oxygen, and the area that is outside is going to have more amount of oxygen. So there will be a potential difference between both the areas, the area where there is food debris accumulated and where it is not accumulated, and in between we have saliva that is going to act as an electrode. So circuit will be formed, and since the bottom area is going to act like an anode, the corrosion will occur in this area, and corrosion products will get deposited in this area. So concentration cell in corrosion says that the corrosion occurs in the concentrated area where the food debris are concentrated, that area acts like an anode. So this type of question can occur. And which area acts like an anode? The area where there are food debris, this question can come. And another is your another example of your concentration cell corrosion is your crevice corrosion. Many a time questions are also asked on crevice corrosion. What happens is that in the area of crevice or in the area of cervical area, what happens is that food debris are accumulated, and above that there is a bridge or restoration or a crown, anything. So because of the food debris in that area, there is going to be a different no oxygen in that area, and difference in the electrode potential between that area where debris are accumulated and the metal that is above the tooth surface, and saliva again will act like an electrolyte, and that is going to cause corrosion. So this is known as your concentration cell corrosion. So fine, is that clear to you? And such type of corrosion is known as crevice corrosion. Question can occur on your crevice corrosion also. Many a times question are asked that in the marginal gaps of the crown, bridges, there is a presence of food debris. So what you can do to prevent the concentration cell corrosion is that to have a good oral hygiene, because there would be no food debris and there would be less corrosion in that case. So method to prevent corrosion is just to apply varnish, because there would be no food debris, there would be no anode forming areas, there would be no electrolyte, and there would be no corrosion. So these are the questions that are asked in this case and from this topic. And in the last, I want to say that working hard for something we don't care about is called as stress, and working hard for something we love is called passion. So basically, if studying is your passion, and if you are very passionate for getting an MDS seat, so it will not be working hard, it will not be stress, you will just enjoy the journey, and you will go through it, and you will reach your destination. And so we are here with our online videos, tests and MCQs, WhatsApp discussion, short notes and all. Whosoever want to contact can contact me in the number I have given here. Fine. Okay. Thank you.